companies, and they own patents. CDC owns 58 vaccine patents. NIH owns multiple patents. Not only that, NIH makes tens of millions of dollars a year from sales of the Gardasil vaccine alone. But individuals, powerful individuals at NIH have the right to collect royalties from sales of Gardasil of up to $150,000 a year if they did work on the Gardasil patent. Or you have guys at that agency who are running divisions of that agency who are paying their mortgage based on Gardasil sales. They're supposed to be regulating Gardasil, and it corrupts the whole agency because none of their underlings who are looking to them for promotions and raises are going to question this horrible arrangement. And for me, it's like if somebody said to the EPA, you're going to make half your budget from now on selling coal. Oh, it is agency capture on steroids. Oh, they've transformed these agencies into sock puppets for the industries that they're supposed to take by. And they become the most aggressive spokespeople for the vaccination program. And the connection between the industry and the regulators is now completely seamless, and they all have their own individual incentives to protect the program and not protect the children. And the other barrier is the press, and the press has been taking out the press. In this country, these pharmaceutical companies spend $25 billion a year into direct-to-consumer promotion. This is illegal in every other country in the world for pharmaceutical companies to advertise on TV, except for New Zealand. And they spent $9.6 billion last year on TV and radio and newspaper and web advertising. Well, Anderson Cooper is sponsored by Pfizer. How humiliating is that? Erin Burnett, it says at the end, sponsored by Pfizer.
Wow.
Lester Holt, sponsored by Merck. Roger Ailes, who I knew very well, who started Fox News, and I spent 2 months with him in a tent when I was 17 years old in Africa, and I had this weird relationship with him ever since. His son was vaccinated, and he wanted to put me on TV to talk about the issue, but he said, I can't do it. In fact, I'd have to fire any of my hosts who allowed you on their show. He said, typically on an evening news show, about 17 of the 22 ads are pharmaceutical ads. He said, if I let you on at my network to talk about this, I would get a call from Rupert Murdoch within 10 minutes. Rupert Murdoch owns one of the biggest vaccine companies in the world. It's a vaccine testing company, and he tests vaccines for Glaxo, Merck, Sanofi, and Pfizer. And his son James, who now runs the Empire, has for many years served on the board of GlaxoSmithKline, the biggest vaccine maker in the world. Oh, it's hard to think that we'll get a fair shot, anywhere in the press. And of course, the purchase of advertising by those companies on the press is not just purchasing advertising; they're purchasing content. Those companies know that they will lose that advertising if they allow criticism on TV. The journals are now completely controlled by those 4 pharmaceutical companies. So that now, not only are they not allowing science, alternate science, dissenting science into the journals, but they're actually going back and systematically purging all of the studies that we rely on when we go to court, and this is a real problem for us and a problem for democracy. And then, of course, the lawyers who were a big, huge, would be a bulkhead against the power of these giant pharmaceutical companies, have been removed from this issue alone. The lawyers in the courts have gone, Well, the only thing standing between that company and that little child are the doctors. And now in the state of California and New York, the doctors have been removed. A doctor, and I said to the legislators in California, the MMR vaccine is a failing vaccine. Their own people, Great Poland, says that within 7 years of taking the vaccine, up to 19% of people no longer have immunity. And are you giving me a signal? Okay, you want me to shut up? There's some studies that show 33% of people don't have immunity to measles after taking the vaccine within 20 years. Oh, you have the legislation in California targets a group of people, just kids with medical exemptions, which they've now eliminated medical exemptions in California. This is 5,000 children. These are the most vulnerable children. These are children. This is how cruel and barbaric this is. These are children who've been told by their doctors, you cannot receive a vaccine because you've got a prior seizure, or because your brother had a seizure, or for whatever reason. It is dangerous and perhaps deadly for you to receive a vaccine. And this law targets them. Instead of targeting, that's 5,000 people. There are hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people walking around the state of California who have no immunity because the vaccine failed. Why are they targeting the 5,000 kids who have no immunity because they're too sick to have immunity? Because they're not allowed, they can't get that vaccine. Why aren't they targeting the real culprit, which is Merck? Merck promised this vaccine would give everybody lifetime immunity, and it doesn't work. They lied. It used to say that on their website. They've removed it. Lifetime immunity. We're going to eliminate the disease. California this year, 79% of measles cases were in adults. This is not something that's being spread by these 5,000 kids. There's not a single instance of that happening. It's being spread by adults, and it's being spread because the vaccine doesn't work. And the legislatures cannot think of anything to do other than punish the children. Punish the most vulnerable children in the state. So now they've taken the doctors out. And of course, the last thing standing between that company and those little kids is the mom and the dad. And now this legislation that we've seen in this state is now removing that protection. And these are companies that are going to commoditize everything that they say, including our children. They're turning, and you know what they're doing. They're making $50 billion on the front end, selling mandatory vaccines by coercion to our children, and then they're making $500 billion on the back end, selling the Adderall and the EpiPens and the diabetes medicine and the rheumatoid arthritis medicine and the anti-seizure medicine and the albuterol inhalers, and they have lifetime clients of those drugs that they themselves created by giving them these poisons at birth. And you know, everybody gets subsumed in the orthodoxy. The guy from BBC said, you know, isn't this conspiracy theory? How could all of these people be involved in, you know, harming all of our kids? And, you know, it would take a massive organization to organize that conspiracy. And I said, it happens all the time. The Catholic Church did the same thing. And I said, not everybody knows everything that's going on, but people get subsumed in an orthodoxy. They become convinced that the most important thing is to protect the institution, because the institution is so important to society. And so we can't allow bad things that are done by that institution to become public, because people will lose faith in it and all of us will get harmed. That's what the Catholic Church, you had a handful of predatory priests who were raping children. But the other priests also were convinced not to talk about it. And the nuns, and the monsignors, and the bishops, and the archbishops, and the cardinals, and the pope, and they were all involved in it. They all knew. It wasn't just people in that institution. It was the press. If you see that movie Spotlight about how the Boston Globe wrote the story finally. It admits in there that they knew it for 20 years. They knew it was happening before anybody spoke about it. The police knew, the prosecutors knew, everybody knew. In some cases, even the parents knew. And they got subsumed also in the orthodoxy. They were somehow convinced in one way or the other that they should keep their mouths shut for the good of the community, and that they were making a sacrifice, that their child was collateral damage. It happened with the concussion scandal in the NFL. It happened with lead. It's happened with x-rays. It happened in hundreds and hundreds of different ways. With the cigarettes, we see it happen all the time. And it's happening here. And the only thing, and in order to get away with this, they need to subvert democracy. And that's why what we're doing here is so important, because this is the only way to change this. They own everybody. They own all the institutions. The only way to battle this is in the courts, which we're doing, and with the grassroots activists. And that's why what you're doing here today is so important. We have these extraordinary, capable people. You know how capable the people in this movement are, how well-informed, how smart, how motivated, that they'll go on a drop of a dime. They'll drive 300 miles, get on a plane, show up at a demonstration. They're well-informed, they know the science, they've read it, and they're incredible activists, but they've never coalesced into a coherent political force in our country. And we need to do that. Yeah. We need to not have 50 different groups and 50, we need to have really extraordinary. Will you come up here? These two incredible people. What they did in Albany was really extraordinary. This bill passed by one vote. It's the lowest margin of any bill in a decade. And it was because you guys showed up and these extraordinary grassroots organizers. One of the things that Pharma has is they have a permanent presence in Albany. So they have people who are knocking every day and developing relationships, and that's what, when in California, we had this huge outpouring in 2015 that overwhelmed the legislatures, but then everybody disappeared. So 2 years later, Pharma was up there the whole time doing push-ups. And we were all back taking care of sick kids. And we need a permanent presence up there doing the push-ups right next to Pfizer and Merck and all of their cronies and surrogates and satellites and shills. And we need people who are developing relationships with these legislatures who can walk in, who they trust, they know, and this is the only way to do that. We're doing the litigation. There's a lot of great things we're doing. We have 2 litigation strategies. We met with all the lawyers yesterday, and we have 4 or 5 lawsuits that we're about to launch in New York State. We're going to try to get a stay. That's our objective. What we tell people is lower your expectations. We have a very strong case. You don't know what the judges are going to do, and everybody needs a plan B. You need to pray for success, but you need to prepare for a failure of these lawsuits. But then we have a longer-term strategy, and that is our big litigation strategy, which is first of all, the Gardasil case, Rolf Hazelhurst, who's here. We have Rolf's son is the last case that survived because of his legal talent. The the omnibus autism proceeding. It was one of the flagship cases in omnibus autism. It's the only one of 5,400 cases that is still in court, and we're trying that case next June in Tennessee.
Wow, nice.
We have a case in the Roby case, which was a Gardasil case, and the great thing about these cases that should give you a lot of hope is for over 10 years, the plaintiffs bar, the big, powerful plaintiffs law firms who have the money to try these kind of cases have stayed away from vaccines because so many of them got destroyed by the thimerosal decisions, and a couple of them went bankrupt. And so they've looked at it as a third rail, radioactive, we're not going to go near it. Now they're back in. And the reason they're back in is because we've been able to convince them that there is a way to sue these companies. And you can't sue them for product liability, but you can sue them for fraud.
Yeah.
And you can sue them for the injuries if you can show the injuries resulted from fraud in the licensing and marketing process. And we now can show that in black and white. And I went up with Paul Pennick from Weiss Luxembourg and did the science day for a Superior Court judge in California, and she cleared the decks for us and put us now in discovery. So we are about to go into mercy. Let me tell you the best case scenario. We have one case. Jennifer Roby, a 15-year-old girl, a volleyball star, an academic star, who got the Gardasil vaccine. She's been in a wheelchair. She has no bowel or bladder control. She's 24-year-old. She wears Depends. She has seizures every 40 to 90 seconds. She cannot come out into the sunlight because of because it causes her to seize. She can't read because it causes her to seize. She has to stay in a room with dark glasses on and the shades on all day.
My God.
And we have her case. If we can pass, there's two hurdles. One is we prove fraud, easy. We get to a jury with that. We have to first prove causation, and that's going to be our big challenge. And particularly since they're, stripping all the science out of the journals. But if we can do that, what you're going to see is, and the next day, we're going to file thousands and thousands of identical cases. And just like what happened in the Monsanto case, and all of my attorneys from the Monsanto case, all the firms, Weiss, Luxembourg, Morgan, Baum, Hedlund, are all with me in the Roby case. They're with me because they think this is a $1 trillion case. What Merck has done makes what Monsanto did look like a Sunday school celebration. And they believe that they're going to make $1 trillion on this case. Oh, and what you're going to see, the tipping point that's going to occur is that if we win that case immediately, you will see wall-to-wall advertisements on TV stations across the country with lawyers like you see from mesothelioma and Monsanto saying, if you've been harmed by the Gardasil vaccine, if you have migraine headaches, if you have seizures, if you have autoimmune disease, if you have rheumatoid arthritis, if you have diabetes, all of these things, and people are all going to say, holy cow, I didn't know a vaccine could do that to you. And by the way, I have rheumatoid arthritis, and now that I think about it, it started when I got that vaccine. So you're going to see this, a change that's going to happen then, and that I think will end up bringing down the whole vaccine program. We also have a RICO case. We're going to file in about 2 months. That's already 900 pages, and that one again is a killer case. I'm not going to talk too much about that, but it's a racketeering case. My father wrote the racketeering statute to get at the mafia, and these guys are like the mafia, but 10 times worse.
Yeah.
And they use all the methods the mafia use, and the analogy is almost perfect. Listen, a lot of us get discouraged because we're up against these big shots all the time, but we're going to win it. And tell you is a metaphor that I heard very early on with environmental issues, and I just saw it work again and again, which is when you're trying to turn a big super tanker in the harbor, for example, down here, which you can watch, they cannot turn on their own power. They have inertia that just keeps them moving forward in one direction because of their weight and their heft. And the way that they turn them is they have a tugboat that hits the bow, or maybe sometimes 10 tugs, hitting the bow again and again. They have to sometimes hit the bow hundreds, even 1,000 times. There's no perceptible change in that momentum. And then suddenly, one of those hits begins turning, and then they flip almost instantaneously. But you have to hit them 1,000 times before it turns. And all the things that you're doing as activists, every phone call you make, every visit you make to a legislature, every demonstration that you show up in, is the tugboat hitting that bow one more time. And we just have to hit it a certain amount of time, and then it's going to flip. And the more organized we are to make sure that we're hitting every day with the greatest frequency possible is going to make it hit sooner and later. And every day that we bring that closer to us are thousands of children all over the world whose lives will be saved. So you're on God's team in this, and we're going to make it work. We have extraordinary leadership in this organization, and Lynn and Stephanie and all the other people who are leading it, who I have this extraordinary faith in, and I am so happy for your support. And we'll stand shoulder to shoulder, and we'll win this.
Yes.
Thank you.